6 months had passed since the Council's betrayal, and humanity was losing the war badly. The orbital blockade around Earth was complete, with alien warships forming an iron ring around the home planet. No ships could leave, no supplies could get in, and the billions of people on the surface were slowly running out of hope. Commander Steve Collins stood in the hidden command center, buried deep under the surface of Kepler 442b, a planet so far from Earth that most humans had never heard of it. The base was small, cramped, and filled with the last free humans in the galaxy. Around him, holographic displays showed the grim reality of their situation. "Report," Steve said to the young officer at the communications console. "Lieutenant Ben." Garcia looked up from his screen, exhaustion clear in his eyes. "We lost contact with New Tokyo Station 3 hours ago. The Council forces hit them hard. No survivors reported." Another red dot disappeared from the tactical display. New Tokyo had been home to 2 million humans. Now, it was just empty space and debris. "What about the Proxima colonies?" Steve asked. "Gone last week," Garcia replied quietly. "The Stone Lords brought their planet crackers. Nothing left but asteroids." Steve closed his eyes for a moment. When the war started, humanity had controlled 43 star systems with over 50 billion people spread across hundreds of worlds and space stations. Now they were down to maybe a few million survivors scattered in hidden bases like this. One. But the humans weren't just running and hiding. They were learning. Dr. Patricia Wong looked up from her computer terminal in the corner of the command center. She had been one of Amanda Clark's students before the war, and now she was humanities, head of weapons development. "Steve, you need to see this." She brought up a recording from the battle at Titan Base 2 weeks ago. The display showed human fighters trying to engage a Council battleship. The alien vessel was massive, its shields glowing as human weapons. "Hit it with everything they had." "Watch this part," Patricia said, slowing down the recording. "See how their shields react to plasma fire versus kinetic rounds?" Steve studied the display. "The plasma makes them flicker, but the kinetic rounds barely register." "Exactly. And look at this." She switched to a different recording from the Battle of Vega Prime. "The Zephyrian crystal ships are weak to sonic weapons, but their hulls can absorb laser fire and actually get stronger." It was becoming clear that every alien species had built their technology around fighting each other. They had been at peace for so long that they had forgotten how to adapt to new threats. But humans were natural adapters. "We're not trying to beat them at their own game anymore," Patricia continued. "We're changing the rules." Lieutenant Garcia suddenly sat up straight at his console. "Commander, we're getting an encrypted transmission from the Kuiper Belt. It's Dr. Rodriguez." Steve felt his heart skip. Dr. Maria Rodriguez had been leading a secret research project in the outer solar system for the past 4 months. Her team included some of the smartest humans who had managed to escape Earth before the blockade closed. "Put her through," Steve ordered. The hologram flickered to life, showing a tired woman in her 50s with gray hair and determined eyes. Behind her, Steve could see a massive laboratory carved into the inside of an asteroid. "Steve, I need to show you something," Maria said without preamble. "We've been working with the quantum field technology that got us into this mess in the first place. The Council said it was too dangerous," Steve replied, "that it could destroy reality." "They were wrong about the danger," Maria said, a strange excitement in her voice. "But they were also wrong about what it could do. We've made a breakthrough." She stepped aside, revealing a device that looked like a metallic sphere surrounded by spinning rings of energy. The air around it seemed to shimmer and bend, as if reality itself was having trouble deciding what was real. "We call it a quantum possibility generator," Maria explained. "The Council thinks the universe works like a machine, with fixed rules and predictable outcomes. But quantum physics tells us something different. At the smallest level, reality is all about probability. Things don't have to happen the way everyone expects." Dr. Patricia Wong leaned forward, fascinated despite herself. What does that mean for us? It means we can change the odds, Maria said with a grin. What if I told you we could make our ships exist in multiple places at the same time? What if our weapons could hit targets before we even fired them? What if we could see every possible outcome of a battle and choose the one where we win? The command center fell silent. It sounded impossible, like something from a fantasy story rather than real science. Show me, Steve said simply. Maria turned to someone off camera. Bring in the test subject. A young man walked into view, wearing what looked like a modified spacesuit covered in the same shimmering energy as the device. Steve recognized him as Dr. Carl Murphy, one of the volunteers who had stayed behind when the evacuation orders went out. Watch this, Maria said. Carl reached out toward a control panel that was clearly across the room from where he stood. His hand seemed to stretch through space itself, becoming translucent as it moved. He pressed a button that should have been impossible for him to reach. The quantum field allows him to exist in superposition, Maria explained, using the scientific term like it was perfectly normal. He's both here and there at the same time until he chooses which reality he wants to make permanent. Steve stared at the display in amazement. How many people can do this? Anyone, Maria replied. The technology amplifies something that's already in human consciousness. We think it might be why our species developed so quickly compared to others. We're naturally quantum beings living in a linear world, Lieutenant Garcia interrupted from his console. Commander, we're picking up. Council fleet movements. Looks like they've found our location. We have maybe 6 hours before they get here. Steve looked back at the hologram of Dr. Rodriguez. Maria, how long before you can make this technology work in battle? The prototype ship is ready now, she said. But we need a pilot. Someone willing to be the first human to step outside. Normal space-time. Captain Lisa Stone stepped forward from where she had been quietly listening. She commanded the last free human fleet, 12 ships that had somehow avoided destruction for 6 months. I'll do it, Lisa. We don't know what this will do to you, Steve warned. The quantum field could change you in ways we can't predict. Good, Lisa replied firmly. Because what we are now isn't working. The Council has superior numbers, better weapons, and thousands of years of experience. Our only advantage is that we're willing to try things they would never consider. Dr. Rodriguez nodded approvingly. The quantum ship is hidden in the asteroid field near Jupiter. Lisa, if you can get there, we can begin field testing immediately. What about the rest of us? Patricia Wong asked. We keep doing what humans do best, Steve replied, looking around at the faces of his people. We adapt, we learn, and we refuse to give up. Over the next few hours, as Council ships closed in on their position, the hidden base became a hive of activity. Steve's people began evacuating to even more remote locations, taking with them everything they had learned about fighting aliens. But more importantly, they carried with them hope. For the first time since the war began, humanity had found something the Council couldn't match. While the aliens thought in terms of fixed rules and predictable outcomes, humans were about to start playing by the laws of quantum probability. As the last transport ship left Kepler 442b, Steve Collins looked back at the base that had been his home for 6 months. Soon, Council forces would find it and destroy it, just like they had destroyed so many human settlements. But this time, it didn't matter, because Captain Lisa Stone was already on her way to Jupiter, where a ship waited that could exist in multiple realities at once, and Dr. Maria Rodriguez was preparing to teach humanity how to become something the Council had never encountered before. The war was about to change in ways that would make the aliens wish they had never heard of Protocol 7. But first, humanity had to learn how to become ghosts in the machine of reality itself. The quantum revolution was about to begin. The stealth ship, Digital Ghost, dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Zenithian system. Alex Chen stood in the small bridge, watching the stars shift back to normal positions on the main screen. Beside her, Captain Steve Mitchell checked his instruments. "We're invisible to their sensors," Mitchell said. "The new stealth coating is working perfectly." Alex nodded, but kept her eyes on the tactical display. In the distance, she could see the lights of the Zenithian defense fleet gathered around their home world of Praxis Prime. They looked tiny compared to what was coming. "How long until the Korthak arrive?" she asked. 47 hours, Mitchell replied. Alex turned to look at her team. They were crammed into the ship's small briefing room, which was barely big enough for 5 people. Marcus Johnson sat hunched over a collection of electronic equipment he had been modifying during the BA trip. Linda Rodriguez was typing rapidly on 3 different laptops at once. Danny Park had headphones on and was listening to intercepted alien communications. Karen Walsh was studying psychological profiles on a tablet. "All right, people," Alex said. "Time to earn our paychecks." Marcus looked up from his work. He was a big man with thick fingers that seemed too large for delicate electronics, but Alex had seen him rewire a smartphone using parts from a microwave. "I've got the quantum interface working," he said. "It's ugly, but it should let us tap into their communication network." He held up a device that looked like a laptop computer married to a pile of spare parts. Wires and circuits stuck out in all directions. "Don't ask me to explain how it works. Half the components are human technology and half are based on Zenithian quantum physics. Theoretically, it shouldn't function at all." "But it does?" Alex asked. "Like a charm. We'll be able to intercept their quantum-entangled communications. More importantly, we'll be able to inject our own signals into their network." Linda looked up from her computers. She was a small woman with curly red hair and bright green eyes. "I've been analyzing the communication intercepts Danny grabbed during our trip here. The Korthak use a fascinating network architecture." She turned one of her laptops so everyone could see the screen. It showed a complex diagram with thousands of connected nodes. Every ship in their fleet is connected to every other ship through quantum entanglement. But the network isn't flat. It's hierarchical. Alex studied the diagram. "Show me how it works." Linda pointed to different parts of the display. Individual ships report to squadron commanders. Squadron commanders report to fleet admirals. Fleet admirals report to sector commanders. And everyone ultimately reports to the Emperor's flagship, the Dominion Eternal. "It's like a military chain of command," Alex said. "Exactly. And that gives us opportunities. Orders flow down from the top, and information flows up from the bottom. But here's the interesting part. There's no error checking." Danny pulled off his headphones and joined the conversation. He was young, maybe 25, with black hair and glasses. "I've been listening to their communications for 3 days now. They never question orders. Ever. If a superior tells them to do something, they do it immediately, no matter how strange it seems." Karen looked up from her tablet. She was in her 30s with blonde hair and sharp blue eyes. "I've been studying their psychology. The Korthak are completely hierarchical. Questioning a superior's judgment is considered the worst possible crime in their society. They'd rather die than disobey a direct order." Alex felt a plan forming in her mind. "So if we could inject fake orders into their network, they'd follow them without question," Linda finished. "But there's a problem. We'd need to make the orders look completely authentic. The right format, the right authorization codes, the right command signatures." Marcus grinned and patted his jury-rigged quantum interface. "Leave that to me. This baby doesn't just intercept their signals. It can analyze their data structure and create perfect copies." Alex looked around at her team. They were computer experts, not soldiers. They had never been in a real battle before. In a few hours, they would be attempting something that had never been tried in the history of warfare, attacking an enemy fleet with nothing but laptops and creativity. "Captain Mitchell," Alex called. "Take us closer to the Zenithian fleet. We need to meet with their commanders." An hour later, Alex and her team were aboard the Zenithian flagship Bright Dawn. The ship was beautiful, with curved walls and soft lighting, but Alex could feel the tension in the air. Everywhere she looked, she saw alien faces filled with fear. Ambassador Veltar met them in the command center. Up close, he looked even more worried than he had in his transmission to Earth. His blue skin had a gray tint, and his large eyes were bloodshot. "You are the warriors Earth has sent?" Veltar asked. He looked at Alex's team with confusion. They were dressed in casual clothes and carrying laptop bags. "We're the backup you requested," Alex replied diplomatically. Admiral Zexlon, the Zenithian military commander, stepped forward. He was taller than Veltar and wore a uniform covered in medals. "With respect, humans, we asked for soldiers. We asked for weapons. The Korthak fleet will arrive in 39 hours. How do you plan to fight them with computers?" Alex looked at the tactical displays surrounding the command center. They showed the approaching Korthak fleet in detail. 10,000 ships moving, in perfect formation. It was the largest military force she had ever seen. "Tell me about their coordination," Alex said. "How do they maintain such perfect formations across such vast distances?" Admiral Zexlon looked puzzled by the question. "They use quantum-entangled communications. Every ship can talk to every other ship instantly, no matter how far apart they are. It gives them perfect battlefield coordination." "Have you ever tried to jam their communications?" Alex asked. "Of course. It's impossible. Quantum entanglement can't be blocked or intercepted by conventional means." Alex smiled. "You're right. It can't be blocked, but it can be accessed." She nodded to Marcus, who began setting up his quantum interface. The device looked even more ridiculous among the smooth, elegant Zenithian technology. Wires and circuits, stuck out everywhere, held together with tape and determination. "What is that thing?" Admiral Zexalan asked. "Our secret weapon," Alex replied. She turned to Linda. "Show them what we've learned." Linda connected her laptop to the Zenithian display system, the main screen filled with her analysis of the Korthak network structure. "Your enemy isn't just a fleet of ships. It's a single giant computer network. Every vessel is connected to every other vessel through quantum entanglement." The Zenithian officers stared at the diagram. They had never thought of the enemy fleet in those terms before. "This network structure gives them incredible advantages," Linda continued. "Perfect coordination, instant communication, no confusion or delays. But it also gives them a critical weakness." "What weakness?" Veltar asked. Alex stepped forward. "They've never faced an enemy that could hack into their network. In all their centuries of conquest, they've never encountered digital warfare. They don't even encrypt their internal communications because the idea of network infiltration is completely foreign to them." Admiral Zexalon shook his head. "Even if you could somehow access their network, what good would it do? You can't destroy ships with computer commands." "Who says we want to destroy ships?" Alex replied. "Destroying ships would just make them angry. We're going to do something much worse." She looked around at the assembled Zenithian officers. "We're going to confuse them." Danny had put his headphones back on and was listening to Korthak communications through Marcus's interface. "Alex," he called out, "you need to hear this." Alex put on a spare set of headphones. Through the quantum link, she could hear the Korthak fleet communications. The voices were harsh and mechanical, speaking in a language the translation software could barely handle. "Fleet command to all vessels. Maintain formation 77 Alpha. Target acquisition will commence in 37 hours. Squadron 15, acknowledging. Formation 77 Alpha maintained. Sector command to regional commanders. Emperor's directive is clear. Total destruction of all Zenithian assets. No survivors. Alex listened for several minutes. The communications were incredibly efficient. No wasted words, no casual conversation, just pure military coordination. It was like listening to a machine, but it was also revealing. Every command had a specific format. Every response followed a precise protocol. The Korthak military was efficient, but it was also predictable. Alex pulled off the headphones and looked at her team. This is going to work. Karen had been studying the psychological profiles on her tablet. I've identified their command structure. The Emperor's flagship coordinates everything. Regional commanders control groups of fleet admirals. Fleet admirals control squadron commanders. Squadron commanders control individual ships. How rigid is the hierarchy? Alex asked. Completely rigid. A fleet admiral would never question an order from a regional commander even if it seemed wrong, and a regional commander would never question an order from the Emperor. Alex nodded. Perfect. Marcus, how long to create authentic-looking command signatures? Marcus was already working on his interface. Give me 4 hours and I'll have perfect. Forgeries of their authorization codes. Linda was typing furiously on her laptops. I'm mapping their entire... The Council Armada dropped out of hyperspace, expecting to find Earth surrounded by desperate human defenders. Instead, they found nothing but empty space and the beautiful blue planet spinning peacefully in the void. Council Prime Zerath 9 stood on the bridge of his flagship, his thousand-mind consciousness trying to process what his sensors were telling him. No orbital defense platforms, no weapon satellites, no sign of human military presence at all. Where are they? Asked Gorvex of the Stone Lords, his rocky voice rumbling across the communication channel. Scanning all frequencies, reported Mistral 7, of the Wind Dancers. No human ships detected within the system. But Zerath 9 felt something like cold dread spreading through his collective consciousness. Humans didn't abandon their home world. They didn't run from fights they couldn't win. In the months of war, the Council had learned that humanity's greatest strength was their refusal to give up when facing impossible odds. The answer came from everywhere and nowhere at once. Human ships began materializing throughout the Council. Formation, but not in any way that normal physics could explain. They didn't drop out of hyperspace or decloak from hiding. They simply phased into existence from angles that shouldn't exist, appearing in the spaces between reality where quantum probability allowed multiple states to coexist. Admiral Ron Clark's voice echoed across all communication frequencies simultaneously, speaking from the past, present, and future at the same time. Honored Council, you came here to destroy us. Instead, we offer you the chance to evolve. Impossible, Zerath 9 transmitted back. Our sensors show your ships in multiple locations simultaneously. You cannot exist in quantum superposition, at macro scale. We've learned not to let impossibility limit our possibilities, replied Dr. Maria Rodriguez, her voice carrying harmonics from dimensions beyond normal perception. You taught us that evolution is dangerous, so we evolved beyond danger itself. The demonstration that followed redefined every species' understanding of what was possible in the universe. Human ships attacked the Council Armada, but their weapons didn't behave like normal energy beams or kinetic projectiles. Instead, they fired probability cascades that struck targets in multiple timelines simultaneously. Council vessels found themselves being destroyed by attacks that came from their own past, their possible futures, and alternate realities where the battle had unfolded differently. Captain Sue Martin materialized on the bridge of Zerath 9's flagship, not as a solid person, but as a quantum consciousness that existed in 17 different probability states. Her form shifted between different versions of herself, young and old, confident and uncertain, human, and something more than human. You don't understand what you're fighting, she said, her voice speaking in harmonics that the Hive Collective's translation systems couldn't fully process. We're not just using quantum technology anymore. We've become quantum beings. What does that mean? Zerath 9 asked, backing away from the shifting human figure. It means we can see every possible outcome of this battle, Sue replied, gesturing toward viewports that now showed the conflict from multiple probability perspectives. In some timelines, you destroy us completely. In others, we annihilate your entire armada. But in the best possible futures, we transcend the need for this conflict entirely. To demonstrate Sue reached out and touched Zerath-9's consciousness, directly, allowing the alien leader to experience quantum perception for just a moment. Suddenly, he could see the battle from every possible angle, understand every choice that had led to this moment, and perceive the infinite branching paths of what might happen next. The experience lasted only seconds, but it changed everything. "You're not trying to conquer us," Zerath-9 realized, his voice filled with wonder and terror. "You're trying to elevate us." "Finally," said Commander Amy Foster, appearing next to Sue in a similar state of quantum superposition. "We tried to tell you this from the beginning. Humans don't want to rule the galaxy. We want to help it grow." Around the battle zone, other human consciousness entities were materializing on Council ships throughout the Armada, but instead of attacking, they were solving problems that the various species had struggled with for centuries. Captain Dan Murphy appeared before the Zephyrian crystal ships and showed them how to achieve perfect energy-matter conversion, eliminating their species' ancient power shortages. Dr. Kate Wilson materialized among the gaseous Nethians and taught them how to achieve stable physical forms, ending their eternal struggle with entropy. On the Stone Lord's planet Crackers, quantum-enhanced humans demonstrated how to terraform dead worlds using nothing more than focused consciousness and quantum field manipulation. The massive rock beings watched in amazement as barren asteroids bloomed with life through applications of probability mathematics that they had never imagined. "This is what we became when you tried to contain us," Admiral Clark explained, his consciousness now distributed across the entire battle zone. "Not conquerors, not destroyers, but gardeners of possibility itself." The war ended not with humanity's victory, but with their transcendence beyond the very concept of conflict. Zerath. 9 found himself standing in a space that existed between realities, surrounded by human consciousness entities who had evolved, beyond the need for physical forms. Around him, representatives from every council species were experiencing the same revelation. "We offer you a choice," Dr. Rodriguez said, her form now pure light and possibility. "You can continue to govern, through fear and limitation, or you can join us in exploring what your species might become if you stopped being afraid of growth." "What about the dangers?" asked Elder Thornbark of the Sylvans. "What about the risks of uncontrolled evolution?" "There are always risks," admitted Captain Lisa Stone, appearing as a figure made of living starlight. "But there are greater risks in stagnation. The universe is vast and full of wonders you haven't even imagined yet. Staying the same isn't safety. It's slow death." One by one, the council species began to understand what humanity was offering. Not domination, but partnership in a kind of existence that transcended the limitations they had accepted for millennia. The Zephyrians were the first to accept, their crystal forms resonating with quantum frequencies as they began to evolve beyond their current state. The Sylvans followed, their plant-like consciousness expanding to embrace probability gardening. Even the conservative Stone Lords began experimenting with quantum enhancement of their geological processes. Within months, the transformation spread across the galaxy. Species that had remained unchanged for thousands of years began evolving, in directions they had never considered possible. Worlds that had been barren for eons bloomed with new life. Technologies that had seemed impossible became commonplace. The Council formally disbanded not because humanity forced them to, but because the need for centralized control became obsolete. When every species had access to quantum consciousness and probability manipulation, traditional power structures simply became irrelevant. Earth remained unchanged in many ways, still beautiful and blue, still home to humans who chose to live linear lives. But it was also now the center of a new kind of civilization that existed across multiple dimensional layers, nurturing the growth and evolution of countless species while exploring frontiers that transcended space and time itself. Dr. Maria Rodriguez, now existing as pure consciousness, distributed across 17 different probability states, stood on a hillside that existed in the space between realities. Around her, the quantum-evolved representatives of hundreds of species worked together on projects that previous generations would have considered divine miracles. "We did it," she said to the consciousness entity that had once been Admiral Clark. "We not only survived, we became something that makes the universe itself more than it was before." "The Council was right to be afraid of us," Clark replied, his awareness now spanning multiple galaxies. "They just didn't understand that fear was the wrong response to what we represented." "And what did we represent?" Rodriguez asked. "Growth," Clark said simply. "The possibility that intelligence doesn't have to accept limitations, that consciousness can evolve beyond any boundary the universe tries to impose. In the quantum foam where possibility meets reality, humanity continued to evolve, becoming something that even time itself found too complex to fully comprehend. They had not just won their war with the Council, they had graduated beyond the need for wars to exist. The species that had once turned on Earth, fearing what humanity might become, now worked alongside them to explore possibilities that stretched beyond the boundaries of imagination itself, and in dimensions that existed between the spaces of normal reality. The quantum-evolved consciousness that had once been human continued to grow, tending gardens of probability where new forms of life and intelligence blossomed like flowers made of living light. The Council had turned on Earth, afraid of humanity's potential. They had been right to fear what humans might become. They had been wrong about everything else. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiance and watched the dead planet spin below them. The world had no name, just numbers and letters that meant nothing to anyone who might have once lived there. Dust covered everything. No cities, no lights, no life. "Sir, we're picking up something strange down there," said Science Officer Amy Martinez. She bent over her instruments, her dark hair falling across her face. "It's not natural, definitely artificial." Morrison walked over to look at her screen. Green lines moved across black space, showing the planet's surface. One spot glowed brighter than the rest, much brighter. "How big?" Morrison asked. "About the size of a city block. It's buried under maybe 50 feet of rock and sand." Chief Engineer Lisa Parker looked up from her station. "Captain, we could dig it out. Might take a few days, though." Morrison thought about it. They were supposed to be mapping this sector, looking for new worlds humanity could use. Finding old junk wasn't part of their mission. But something about that bright spot on the screen made him curious. "Do it," he said. 3 days later, they had their answer. The thing buried in the dead world's sand wasn't junk. It was a perfect black cube, each side exactly 10 feet long. No scratches, no rust, no damage at all, even though it had been buried for who knew how long. "It's beautiful," Amy whispered as they stood in the cargo bay looking at it. The cube sat on a metal table, seeming to drink in the light around it. When Morrison touched it, nothing happened. When Amy ran her scanner over it, the machine went crazy, beeping and flashing like it was broken. "There's something inside," she said. "I can't tell what, but it's active, like it's waiting." That night, Morrison couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the cube. Finally, he went down to the cargo bay. The ship was quiet. Most of the crew was sleeping. He put his hand on the cube again. This time, something happened. Light exploded from the black surface. Not harsh light, but soft and warm. The cube opened like a flower, showing what was inside, a map. Not drawn on paper or shown on a screen, but made of pure light that floated in the air, stars and planets and lines connecting them all. And at the center, one star that pulsed brighter than all the rest. Words appeared in the light, written in human English, even though the cube was clearly not made by humans. "The first forge, where all things began, where all things can end." Morrison stared at the floating words and map. He didn't understand what it meant, but he knew it was important. More important than anything they had ever found. The next morning, he called Earth. President Helen Brooks listened to Morrison's report in her office in New Geneva. Outside her window, the morning sun painted the lake gold. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes, but when she spoke, people listened. "You're sure about this, Captain?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am. The map is real. The coordinates are clear. Whatever this first forge is, someone wanted it to be found." Brooks looked at the photos Morrison had sent. The black cube, the map of light, the strange words. "I'm sending Ambassador Cooper to the Council Station," she said. "We need to report this. It's the law." Morrison's face on the screen looked worried. "Ma'am, with respect, maybe we should study this more first. Find out what we're dealing with." "The law is the law, Captain. We're part of the Galactic Council now. We follow their rules." 3 days later, Ambassador Daniel Cooper stood in the Great Hall of Council Station Alpha. The station was huge, bigger than any city on Earth. Representatives from hundreds of worlds met here to decide the fate of the galaxy. Cooper was nervous. Humanity had only been part of the Council for 50 years. They were still the new kids, still trying to prove they belonged. Most of the other species looked at humans like they were children playing with grown-up toys. The 3 big powers sat at the front of the hall. The Zephyrian Empire, with their tall, thin bodies and skin like living crystal. The Corvan hegemony, built like tanks and twice as mean. And the Thalorian Collective, who could read minds and never seemed to blink. "Honored Council," Cooper began, "humanity wishes to report the discovery of an ancient artifact." He told them about the cube, about the map, about something called the First Forge. The hall erupted. Admiral Zethan of the Zephyrians stood first. His crystal skin caught the light and threw it back in rainbow colors. "This artifact belongs to the Empire. Our records speak of such a device." General Korath of the Corvans slammed his fist on his table. "Lies! The hegemony has older claims to any First Forge technology." Elder Thane of the Thalorians said nothing, but Cooper felt something cold touch his mind. The old alien was trying to read his thoughts. "The artifact was found in unclaimed space," Cooper said loudly, trying to ignore the mental pressure. "Under Council law, it belongs to the species that found it." "Council law can be changed," Zethan said. His voice sounded like glass breaking, or ignored, Korath added. Elder Thane finally spoke, his voice echoing in Cooper's head. "Give us the artifact willingly, young humans. You do not understand what you have found." Cooper felt sweat on his forehead. 3 of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy were all staring at him, all wanting what humanity had found. "I will relay your requests to my government," he said. The next day, Cooper got his answer from Earth. President Brooks had been clear, simple, and completely insane. No. The word rang through the council hall like a gunshot. Representatives from 100 worlds stopped talking and stared. "I beg your pardon?" Zethan asked. "Humanity declines your requests," Cooper said, his voice stronger now. "We will study the artifact ourselves." Korath laughed. It sounded like rocks grinding together. "You have 47 ships, human. We have 10,000. Reconsider." "The number of our ships doesn't change our answer." "It should," Elder Thane said, and his mental voice was cold as space. "Your species has much to lose." Cooper stood up straight. He thought about Earth, about humanity's colonies scattered across dozens of worlds, about billions of people who were counting on him to do the right thing. Our answer is still no. The hall exploded again, but this time it was different. Angry, dangerous. Admiral Zethan's crystal skin flashed bright red. Then, "You have chosen war." "War it is," General Korath agreed. Elder Thane just smiled, and that was the most frightening thing of all. That night, Cooper sent a message back to Earth. It was short. They're coming. All of them. Together. President Brooks read the message in her office. Outside, night was falling over the lake. She thought about the numbers. 47 human ships against more than 10,000 alien vessels. 12 billion. Humans against 500 billion aliens. Any sane leader would surrender. Any logical person would give up the artifact and hope for mercy. Brooks picked up her phone and called Admiral Kate Sullivan. Kate, it's Helen. How long do we have? 6 weeks, maybe 7. They'll need time to coordinate their fleets. Is there any chance we can win? Sullivan was quiet for a long time. No, ma'am. Not in any normal sense. Then we don't fight normal. We fight like humans? What are your orders, Madam President? Brooks looked out at the lake, thinking about her grandchildren. About all the children on all the human worlds who deserved a chance to grow up free. We don't surrender. We don't run. We fight. Even if we can't win? Especially if we can't win. Send a message to all our ships, all our colonies. Tell them what's coming. Tell them what we're going to do about it. And what are we going to do? Brooks smiled. It wasn't a happy smile, but it was determined. We're going to show the galaxy what humans do when someone tries to push us around. We're going to make them remember why they should have left us alone. Admiral Sullivan was quiet again. Then she laughed. It's been an honor serving with you, ma'am. The honor is mine, Kate. Now let's get to work. The die was cast. Humanity had chosen war against impossible odds. Across the galaxy, 3 ancient civilizations prepared their fleets for what they thought would be a quick and easy victory. They were about to learn how wrong they could be. Admiral Kate Sullivan stood in the war room deep under the Swiss mountains and stared at the numbers on the big screen. They were not good numbers. They were terrible numbers. 10,237 enemy ships coming toward Earth. 47 human ships to stop them. Ma'am, said Colonel Tony Richards, we could evacuate Earth. Get as many people off-world as possible. Sullivan shook her head. Where would we send 12 billion people, Tony? And how would we move them fast enough? Dr. Marcus Webb looked up from his computer. He had been studying the cube for 3 weeks straight, barely sleeping, barely eating. His clothes were wrinkled and his hair was a mess. I think I know what the first forge is, he said quietly. Everyone in the room turned to look at him. It's a weapon, but not the kind that blows things up. It's the kind that turns things off. Explain, Sullivan said. Webb pulled up pictures on his screen. The map from the cube, with its floating stars and pulsing center. The first forge can shut down all advanced technology in a star system. Maybe more. Ships would lose power. Computers would stop working. Everything more complex than a hammer would go dead. Including our ships, Richards pointed out. Including our ships, Webb agreed. But here's the thing. Our ships are simpler than theirs. We could rebuild faster, maybe fight with basic weapons, while they're still trying to figure out what happened. Sullivan thought about it. How do we get there? The coordinates show it's past enemy territory. We send one ship, fast and quiet. While the big fleets are fighting here, that's suicide. Maybe, but it's the only chance we have. Captain Morrison walked into the room. He had flown down from his ship as soon as he got the message. You want to send the Defiance, he said. It wasn't a question. You found the cube, Sullivan said. The map responded to you. Maybe the forge will too. Morrison looked at the star charts showing the route to the first forge, through Zephyrian space, through Corvan territory, through the psychic barriers the Thalorians put around their worlds. How many crew? He asked. As few as possible. Volunteers. Only. This is a one-way trip, Jake. Morrison nodded. I'll need Lisa for engineering, Amy for science, Ryan for tactical, and I guess Tony if he wants to come along and shoot things. Richards grinned. Wouldn't miss it, sir. When do we leave? tomorrow. The enemy fleets will be here in 5 weeks. You need to reach the forge before they finish us off here." That night, Morrison walked through his ship. The Defiance wasn't much to look at. She was old and patched, and held together with hope and spare parts. But she was fast and she was tough. Lisa Parker was in engineering, making the ship ready for the impossible journey ahead. She had pulled out every piece of equipment they didn't absolutely need and replaced it with extra fuel and supplies. "How are we looking?" Morrison asked. "Like we're crazy," Lisa said, wiping grease off her hands. "But we might just be crazy, enough to make it work." Amy Martinez was in her lab studying the cube. It sat on her table, dark and quiet again. "Any new discoveries?" Morrison asked. "It only works for humans," she said. "I tried getting other people to touch it. Nothing, but any human can make it light up." "Why?" Amy shrugged. "Maybe we're special. Maybe we're just dumb enough to try, using things we don't understand." Ryan Clark was on the bridge, going over the tactical systems. He was a young man with steady hands and good eyes. "What's our armament look like?" Morrison asked. 2 railguns, 6 missile tubes, basic shields. Against what we're going to face?" Ryan shook his head. "We might as well throw rocks." "Sometimes rocks work," Morrison said. The next morning, they launched. The Defiance slipped away from Earth while the big fleets were still getting organized. No fanfare, no speeches, just 5 humans in an old ship heading into the dark. Behind them, Admiral Sullivan put her plan into action. She called it Protocol Defiance, and it was the craziest thing anyone had ever tried. First, she moved Earth's entire population into underground cities and space stations. Then she filled the planet with fake heat signatures and false radio signals. From space, Earth would still look like it was full of people. Next, she took every ship humanity had and spread them throughout the solar system. But she didn't stop there. She took cargo ships and fitted them with engines from fighters. She took mining platforms and gave them missile launchers. She even took old space stations and turned them into mobile gun platforms. But the real trick was the drones. Thousands of them, each one broadcasting the signature of a full-sized warship. From a distance, it would look like humanity had 10 times as many ships as they really did. "It won't fool them for long," said Captain Ben Hayes, looking at the tactical display. "It doesn't have to," Sullivan said. "Just long enough." The enemy fleets arrived right on schedule. Admiral Korath of the Corvins led the way, his massive dreadnought surrounded by hundreds of smaller ships. Behind him came the crystal ships of the Zephyrians, beautiful and deadly, and behind them the dark vessels of the Thalorians, silent as death. "By the gods!" Korath said as he looked at his sensors. "How many ships do these humans have?" "More than we expected," Admiral Zethan replied from his crystal bridge, "but still not enough." The battle began. Human ships came at the enemy from all directions. Fast attack craft dove through the alien formations, firing missiles and railgun rounds before disappearing again. The big human ships stayed back, using their superior range to pick off targets. But the aliens had numbers. For every human ship, there were 20 enemy vessels. Slowly, steadily, the defenders were pushed back. That's when Sullivan sprang her trap. Hidden throughout the asteroid belt were dozens of mass drivers. Huge railguns that could throw chunks of metal at incredible speeds. When she activated them all at once, they created a wall of destruction that tore through the enemy formations. Clever, Elder Thane admitted as his ship shook from nearby impacts. But not clever enough. The battle raged for hours. Human ships fought like wild animals, using every dirty trick they could think of. When their missiles ran out, they rammed enemy vessels. When their guns overheated, they used their ships as bombs. The aliens were winning, but they were paying a price. Every human ship they killed took 2 or 3 enemy vessels with it. "These humans fight like demons," one Corvin captain said. "They fight like they have nothing to lose," Korath replied. That makes them dangerous. Meanwhile, the Defiance was deep in enemy space, running silent and dark. They had made it through the outer Zephyrian patrol lines using a trick Lisa had come up with. She had modified their energy signature to look like a small asteroid. "Contacts ahead," Ryan said quietly. "Looks like a patrol squadron." 6 crystal ships moved through space in perfect formation, beautiful and deadly. "Can we go around?" Morrison asked. Amy checked her instruments. "Not without adding 2 days to our trip, and we're already cutting it close." Morrison made his decision. "Take us through them, fast and quiet!" Lisa pushed the engines as hard as she dared. The Defiance slipped between the enemy ships like a ghost, so close Morrison could see the aliens on their bridges. They almost made it. "Contact!" One of the Zephyrian ships broadcast. "Unknown vessel in grid 77. The chase began. Crystal ships were fast, but the Defiance was faster. She dove toward a nearby gas giant, using its gravity to slingshot past the enemy formation. "Incoming missiles," Ryan said. "How many?" "All of them." Morrison grinned. "Lisa, how much power can you give me?" "More than we should use and less than we need." "Perfect." "Amy, I need you to do something with that cube." "Like what?" "I don't know. Something unexpected." Amy ran to her lab and put her hands on the black cube. It lit up immediately, showing its map of stars and the pulsing light of the first forge. "Come on," she whispered. "Help us out here." The cube pulsed brighter. Something shot out from it, a wave of energy that spread through the ship. Suddenly, the Defiance's engines roared with power they didn't have. Their shields flared brighter than they should. Their speed doubled. The Zephyrian missiles couldn't catch them. "What did you do?" Morrison asked over the comm. "I have no idea," Amy said, staring at the cube. "But it's helping us." They left the crystal ships behind and pushed deeper into enemy space. Ahead lay the Corvin hegemony, and beyond that, the psychic barriers of the Thalorians. Back in the Sol system, the battle was reaching its climax. Admiral Sullivan's tricks had worked better than she hoped, but they were running out of ships and running out of time. "Ma'am," said Captain Hayes, "we've lost 70% of our fleet." "How about them?" 40% casualties. "But they still outnumber us 5-1. Sullivan nodded. Her plan was working. The enemy was paying a price they hadn't expected, but it wouldn't be enough. Unless Morrison could reach the first forge. Unless humanity's crazy plan actually worked. Unless Will really was stronger than numbers. The fate of humanity hung on 5 people in an old ship, racing through hostile space, toward a weapon they barely understood. It was a long shot, but it was the only shot they had. But Amy was watching from the first forge. Whenever someone tried to bypass the careful rebuilding process, the forge would intervene. Ships would lose power. Weapons would fail. The message was clear. Do it right, or don't do it at all. 10 years. After the war, Morrison found himself back at the first forge. He was older now, grayer, but still determined. He had come to check on Amy and to see how the galaxy was progressing. The ancient station looked the same, but Morrison could feel the life in it now. Amy's consciousness had merged with the forge's systems, but she was still Amy. Still curious. Still caring. "Hello, Jake," her voice said as he entered the control chamber. "You look tired." "It's been a busy decade. How are things out there?" "Getting better. The Corvins have established their